I want you to picture something for a second. Close your eyes if you have to, seriously. Imagine a movement that is loud, chaotic, accessible to absolutely everyone, and completely terrifying to the establishment.
Okay.
It breaks every single rule of good taste. It makes the professionals nervous. It makes the gatekeepers scream that this isn't music, that it's garbage, that it's, the end of culture.
Right. So my mind immediately goes to 1977 London.
The Sex Pistols, exactly.
Safety pins through the nose, the whole thing. Punk rock is the standard historical metaphor we always reach for when we talk about musical disruption. It's the ultimate tear it down moment.
It is, but I'm not talking about punk. I'm talking about right now, today. I'm talking about a moment that might actually be bigger, bolder, and, well, significantly more disruptive than punk rock ever dreamed of being.
And you're talking about?
I'm talking about the explosion of generative AI music, the tools like Suno, Udio, and Stable Audio that are currently just flooding the internet.
It is a bold claim, comparing an algorithm to the visceral rebellion of Johnny Rotten.
I know it sounds crazy.
But when you look at the structural disruption, specifically who gets to make music and how they make it, the comparison doesn't just hold up. It suggests we were in the middle of a revolution that makes punk look like a polite dinner party.
A polite dinner party, I love that. Because we are witnessing a complete dismantling of the barrier to entry.
A total demolition.
And just like punk, people hate it. Or, well, a specific type of person hates it. We have to address the elephant in the room immediately. When we say AI music, I know a lot of you listening right now probably recoil.
Oh, yeah.
You physically cringe. You think fake, soulless theft, robot slop.
The reaction is visceral, and it's entirely understandable. I get it. We value human expression. We value the struggle of the artist, and this technology seems to bypass the human entirely.
It feels like cheating.
It feels like cheating. But the mission of this deep dive isn't to dismiss those fears or tell you they're wrong. It's to contextualize them. We want to flip the narrative and explore the possibility that what we are hearing isn't the death of music, but the democratization of human imagination.
We have got a massive stack of sources today to help us figure this out. We're going to dig into the history of the British Musicians Union protesting synthesizers, which, spoiler alert, actually happened, and it was intense.
It really was.
We're going to look at deep philosophical texts on inauthenticity and why fake might actually be a good thing. And we're going to look at current studies on how people are actually using these tools right now.
We are going to try and answer a fundamental question. Is this legitimate art? And if it is, what does that mean for the soul of the artist?
So, listener, I want you to keep one question in the back of your mind as we go through this. When you hear a song generated by AI, do you hear a robot trying to trick you? Or do you hear a new kind of freedom? Let's dive in.
To understand where we are going, we absolutely have to look at where we've been. Because this feeling, this apocalyptic fear that technology is killing music is not new at all.
Not even close.
It is a cycle that repeats almost every time a new machine enters the studio.
It's the classic history repeats itself trope, but it's actually shocking how accurate the parallels are. We found this fascinating article from The Guardian that talks about the new golden era of synthesizers.
Right, happening now.
But the point they make is that to get to this golden era, we had to go through a period of intense burning hatred for them.
That's right. We tend to look back at the 80s as the era of synth pop, right? You think Depeche Mode, New Order.
Yeah.
Cool, stylish.
Yeah, of course.
But in the early 1980s, the establishment was terrified. The British Musicians Union was so threatened by the synthesizer that they actually passed a resolution to ban them.
A ban? Like, you cannot use this keyboard.
Yes. Specifically, they wanted to ban synthesizers and drum machines from live performances and recording sessions to protect the jobs of, acoustic musicians.
So they didn't see it as an instrument.
They viewed it as a job killer, a scab, a machine that would replace a whole strings section.
Think about how wild that sounds today. If you went to a concert now and there wasn't a keyboard or a laptop on stage, you'd be surprised. It would feel like a throwback.
Exactly. But back then it was seen as this machine coming to take the job of a violin player or a horn section. It was about labor.
And it wasn't just the unions. It was the artists themselves, the rock royalty.
That's maybe the most fascinating part.
There's this famous detail about Queen, one of the greatest rock bands of all time. Freddie Mercury, Brian May, these absolute legends, on the liner notes of their early albums like Queen II and Sheer Heart Attack.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
They famously wrote, "No synthesizers," in bold letters.
A badge of honor.
Yes. It
Yeah.
was a purity test. It was like saying, we are real musicians. We don't use those cheating machines. This is all done with real guitars, real pianos.
Precisely. They viewed the synthesizer as inauthentic. It was noise or conceptual art, not real music. They thought using a synth was a shortcut, that it lacked soul.
But look at the shift. Today, we have festivals like Makina Bristronica in Bristol, celebrating the very technology that was once reviled. What was once a threat to the musician is now the standard tool of the musician.
And that Guardian article makes an amazing point. It says people now are yearning for something they can touch because software synths have become so dominant.
So the thing that was fake in 1980
is now the authentic tactile experience in 2024. The fake becomes the vintage classic.
That is the cycle. The fake becomes the classic.
But there is an even more heartbreaking and specific example of this panic in the story of Don Lewis. This story, which we pulled from a TDM deep dive, really encapsulates the human cost of this transition.
Oh man, this story really hit me. So Don Lewis was this incredible musician and engineer in the 70s and 80s, a genius, really.
A true pioneer.
He built this rig called LEO, the Live Electronic Orchestra. It was basically a custom setup of synths and early drum machines all wired together that let him sound like a full band all by himself.
He was a one-man orchestra. He was doing things that were technically impossible for anyone else at the time. He was merging gospel, electronic, and pop in real time. But the reaction wasn't applause.
It was picketing.
Literally picketing.
In 1984, he shows up to play a gig at a convention center, and there are protesters outside. And at first he thinks, oh, maybe they're protesting the hotel or maybe a political thing.
You'd assume it was something else.
But he looks closer, and the signs say, Don Lewis, unfair to Musicians Union.
That is such a profound moment. They weren't protesting the venue, they were protesting him.
Him, the artist.
The American Federation of Musicians viewed him as a threat because his mastery of technology made other bandmates unnecessary. They picketed a black musician for being too innovative.
It's devastating, and it just shows that the fear is never really about the art or the soul. It's about the labor. It's about displacement.
Always.
Lewis was using a tool that allowed one person to do the work of 5, and the 5 people who would have been hired got angry. It's the exact same conversation we're having about AI right now.
It's identical. This machine does the work of a session musician, so we hate it.
It also parallels the conversation about the soul of the music, too. In that same TDM deep dive on drum machines, they contrast 2 famous machines from the 80s, the Lindrum and the Roland TR-808.
Ah, yes. This distinction is crucial for understanding AI.
Right. So the Lindrum, it used samples of real drums. When you hit the snare button, it played a digital recording of a guy hitting an actual snare drum.
It was trying to sound human. It was trying to pass for the real thing.
It was a mimic.
Exactly. And it was accepted because it mimicked reality. It was a good robot. But the 808 sounded, and I'm quoting the source, alien and from Mars.
It didn't sound like a drum kit at all. It just went boom and tist and clap. It sounded like a machine, and it was proud of it.
And that's the beautiful irony. The machine that tried to sound human, the Lindrum is iconic, sure, but it's kind of a period piece. It sounds very 80s.
But the 808, the one that embraced its fake nature.
That machine literally created hip-hop. It created techno. It created Miami bass. You cannot have modern music without the sound of the 808.
Because it didn't try to replace a drummer.
It created a sound that was physically impossible for a human drummer to create acoustically. That creates a new texture, a new genre, and that is where the parallel to AI is strongest.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the argument against AI is usually, it's just mimicry, it's just copying. But the 808 proves that when a machine fails to mimic perfectly, or doesn't even try,
it creates something new. The glitch becomes the feature, the wrongness becomes the new right.
The apocalyptic narrative always misses this creative pivot.
We saw with photography, too. Baudelaire, the famous poet, he criticized the daguerreotype in the 19th century. He questioned if photography could ever be art because it was just a mechanical reproduction of reality.
He thought it was soulless copying.
And then, ironically, he gets immortalized by a photograph. The most famous image we have of him is a photo.
Of course it is.
And radio. The Musicians Union once resisted playing records over the airwaves. They called it canned music.
Canned music. I love that. Like it's spam or something.
They thought if you could hear music on the radio, no one would ever go to a concert again.
Which is just so wrong. It turned out to be the greatest marketing tool for concerts ever invented.
Exactly. So if we look at history, we are currently in the Don Lewis picketing phase of AI music. We are in the canned music panic phase.
We are. And that suggests that the next phase isn't the end of music, but the integration of the tool.
But to get there, we have to tackle the biggest philosophical hurdle, the idea of authenticity. This is the sticking point for everyone.
This is the heavy stuff. This is where we get into the soul argument. Critics say AI has no soul, it has no aura. But we have a source here, a paper by James Brousseau and Luca Turce, that suggests that inauthenticity might actually be liberating.
It's a fascinating, counterintuitive argument. They engage directly with the work of Walter Benjamin, a philosopher from the 1930s who wrote a seminal essay called The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction.
A classic. But for those of us who haven't read 1930s German philosophy recently, help us out. What is the aura?
Benjamin argued that traditional art has an aura based on its uniqueness, its history, and its physical presence. Think of the Mona Lisa hanging in the Louvre.
Right.
It has a specific location. It was painted by a specific hand at a specific time. You have to travel to Paris, stand in line, and see the object itself. That creates a ritualistic value. That is the aura.
Okay, so the aura is the vibe of history. It's the I am standing in front of the real thing feeling. It's the connection to the specific genius who made it.
Exactly. And Benjamin argued that mechanical reproduction like photography destroys this aura. It detaches the object from tradition. You can print the Mona Lisa on a t-shirt, on a mug, on a postcard.
It loses its uniqueness.
It becomes a commodity.
So if photography destroyed the aura, AI must absolutely nuke it from orbit, right? Because an AI song doesn't even have an original, there is no original object. It's just generated on a server farm somewhere.
That is where Brousseau and Turce take it a step further. They argue that AI art doesn't have an aura. Instead, it has what they call a digital shine.
Digital shine, I like that. It sounds slick. But what does it actually mean in practice? Is it just a fancy word for fake?
Not quite. It's defined by two things: elusiveness and reflection. Let's start with elusiveness.
Okay.
AI art has no single origin story. It comes from nowhere because it comes from everywhere. It's trained on millions of images or songs.
Right. You can't point to one specific brushstroke and say that's from this specific artist. It's a smoothie of a million inputs. It's ghost music.
And the authors use a brilliant analogy to explain why this nowhereness is powerful. They compare AI art to euro banknotes.
Money. Okay, walk me through this one. I'm not following.
Think about the euro. It's a currency shared by many countries: France, Germany, Italy, Spain. On the bills, you see architectural features, bridges and arches.
Yeah, I've seen them.
But look closely. They aren't real bridges. They're generic representations of bridgeness.
Wait, really? I never knew that. They're not pictures of actual places?
Nope. Because if they put a specific French bridge on the bill, the Germans might be annoyed. If they put a Spanish bridge, the Italians might object. So the designers created fake bridges that look like they could exist, but don't.
So they're idealized bridges.
They are. And this anonymity, this lack of specific origin, allows the bills to belong to everyone. They represent the idea of connection without being tied to a specific nation's history.
Wow.
Brousseau argues AI music is the same. It is the euro banknote of creativity. Because it belongs to no specific artist, it potentially belongs to every listener.
That is actually kind of beautiful, the euro banknote of creativity. So because it's generic in its origin, it's universal in its application, it doesn't carry the baggage of the creator.
Which leads to the second part of the digital shine: reflection. Because there is no artist's soul in the machine for you to connect with.
I have to connect with myself.
You project your own meaning onto it. The inauthenticity acts as a mirror.
So instead of trying to figure out what was the artist feeling when they wrote this, well, I'm forced to ask, what am I feeling when I hear this?
Yes. The meaning is generated entirely by the consumer. And the authors argue this leads to what they call liberation through inauthenticity.
Liberation? How so?
Well, think about improvisation. If you and I are jamming and you start playing a sad, slow chord progression, I have to respect that. I have to listen to you, respect your history, your mood.
Right. There's a social contract. I can't just start screaming death metal lyrics over your ballad without being a total jerk.
Exactly. I am constrained by your humanity. But when you jam with an AI, you can demand anything. There are no social constraints. The paper references a study called In a Silent Way, where a human jazz musician plays with an AI drummer.
And let me guess, the human got weird with it.
They got very weird with it. The lack of a human partner removed the social pressure. The human felt free to explore dissonant, strange, or aggressive ideas that they might have been too polite or self-conscious to try with a human drummer.
So the inauthenticity of the partner allowed the human to be more authentic to their own sudden impulses.
That's it. That's the right to discontinuity mentioned in the source. We usually feel pressure to be true to ourselves or stay in our lane. But AI lets you break character. It lets you explore who you could be rather than who you are.
They call it gen humanism, valuing the potential to change over a fixed identity.
So rather than seeing AI as soulless, we can see it as a tool that removes the weight of history and tradition, allowing for radical experimentation.
Which brings us perfectly to the present day, because this isn't just theory anymore. People are doing this right now. We have sources here, specifically the Music and AI Artistic Trends paper, that track exactly what is happening in the wild.
And the scale is just staggering. We're seeing the rise of what they call the casual creator.
The stats are wild. Udio reports generating millions of tracks per week.
Millions a week.
And there is data from Deezer suggesting that something like 10% of daily uploads to streaming services might already be AI generated.
It's a flood, a tsunami of content. But what's interesting is what people are making. It's not just perfect pop songs. There's an embrace of what the researchers call the uncanny.
The uncanny, that's that creepy, not quite right feeling, right? Like when a CGI character's eyes look dead.
Usually, yes.
Yeah.
But artists are leaning into it. They're embracing the glitches, the weirdness. The paper mentions brain rot music and lazy artwork.
Brain rot music. My nephew talks about this. It's this chaotic, meme-heavy, nonsensical stuff. It sounds like the internet melting into a song. But the researchers are saying this is a legitimate aesthetic choice.
Absolutely. Just like the squelch of the TB-303, which was a mistake, an accident of the machine became the defining sound of acid house music. The hallucinations of AI are becoming a genre. The wrongness is the point.
One of my favorite examples from the notes is Dadabots. I've actually listened to this.
Yes. The relentless doppelganger.
It's a 247 live stream of AI-generated death metal. It just never stops. It's been going for years.
It's an infinite installation. Think about that physically. No human band could play death metal for 24 hours a day. Their arms would fall off. Their vocal cords would shred.
Right.
The AI transcends physical limitations. It creates a stamina that is inhuman.
And it creates impossible combinations. The tools like Suno allow you to mix vocal styles with conflicting instrumentations. You can have a 1950s doo-wop group singing over a UK drill beat.
A human band could try to play that,
Yeah.
but they probably wouldn't think to, or they wouldn't have the specific singers to pull it off. The AI has no prejudice against mixing genres. It just does what you ask.
This blurs the line between the artist and the instrument. We are seeing artists like Holly Herndon and Grimes allowing people to clone their voices.
This is the Holly Plus and Grimes AI project.
So you can upload your singing, however bad it is, and it converts it to their voice. And if you release a song using it, you split the royalties 50-50.
Think about the shift in identity there. The artist's voice becomes an instrument for others to play. It turns the artist from a creator of content into a platform for creation.
It's open source celebrity.
And there's also Sinaida's album, Kunst Kaput. It's a generative album where listeners use AI to remix the track. So the album isn't a static thing you buy. It's a dynamic process you participate in.
It shifts music from a product to a process.
But we have to be careful here. We are painting a very rosy picture of creativity and freedom. But there is a strong ideological critique of this democratization in the literature.
Right. We have to look at the paper Opening Musical Creativity, because the marketing pitch from companies like Suno and Udio is very seductive. They say things like, no instrument needed, just imagination.
Unlock your inner Mozart.
It's the narrative that all humans are wired to make music, but modern life has disconnected us from that, and they claim AI is what reconnects us.
But the researchers argue this reflects an ideology they call techno-liberalism.
Techno-liberalism. Break that down for us. It sounds like a buzzword, but it seems important.
It refers to the belief that complex social problems, like lack of access to art education, the cost of instruments, or the difficulty of learning, can be solved by technology and individual consumption.
So instead of funding music programs in schools, the solution is just subscribe to this app for $10 a month.
It frames the solution not as better music schools or more community bands, but as buy this subscription and you can be a creator. It privatizes the solution.
Instead of a community, you have a user and an app.
And it frames the adoption of this tech as inevitable. That is a key part of the ideology. It's a total ideology. You hear users say things like, you can't push the toothpaste back into the tube.
Sink or swim, adapt or die. I see that on Twitter constantly. It creates this anxiety that if you don't use AI, you will be left behind.
And the researchers warn about the risk of de-skilling.
This is the fear that we forget how to actually play an instrument,
Yeah.
right? That we all just become button pushers.
It's deeper than just manual skill. It's the reduction of music to language. If you create music by typing prompts like sad piano jazz with rainy mood, you are relying on genre tags. You're relying on existing words to describe sound.
That's a great point. Music is usually the thing that speaks when words fail, but here, words are the controller. If I can only generate what I can describe, am I limited by my vocabulary?
Exactly. It creates a spandrel, a limitation where music is reduced to what can be categorized by the AI's training data. If you can't name the genre, or if the genre doesn't exist yet, you might not be able to generate it.
It potentially limits innovation to the recombinations of existing labels.
So we get a billion songs, but they're all variations of lo-fi beats to study to because that's the prompt everyone knows how to type. It becomes a feedback loop of the same old stuff.
That is the risk. The Euro banknote becomes so generic that it loses all friction. It becomes background noise.
So where does this go? If we look 10 years into the future, what does the music world look like? Does the human disappear entirely?
We have a study here that tried to run a Turing test on music to see if we can even tell the difference anymore.
This was a fascinating study involving the compositions of Antonin Dvorak, the famous classical composer.
Right.
They took original Dvorak pieces and reduced them to simple, symbolic data, basically stripping away the human performance, leaving just the notes, the melody, the structure.
The raw data of the song, the sheet music, essentially.
Then they compared that to AI-generated imitations in the same style and format. And they found that people, even music experts, struggled to tell the difference.
So pure composition, the writing of the notes, is already a solved problem.
In terms of style mimicry, yes. The human factor that we cherish is often in the performance, the timing, the dynamics, the micro mistakes, the sweat. But the composition itself is becoming indistinguishable.
Which suggests we are moving toward what you'd call a post-authenticity world.
A post-authenticity world. In 10 years, asking, did a human make this, might be as irrelevant as asking, did you hand paint this, about a photograph.
We don't look at a photo and say, well, you didn't paint it, so it's not art. We accept the camera as the medium.
So the process becomes the art. It's not about the MP3 you export at the end. It's about the experience of generating it.
Music might shift from a finished product, a static file, to an interactive experience.
Exactly. Like Brian Eno's generative music concepts, but accessible to everyone. The listener becomes the conductor. You don't just listen to an album, you influence how it plays every time.
The opening musical creativity paper talks about the new man, or the fourth industrial revolution of art.
It sounds a bit grand, I know.
A little, yeah.
But the idea is that we are moving to a world where a person's potential, their taste, their imagination, their curatorial eye matters more than their manual skill.
It's the triumph of taste over technique. You don't need to have the dexterity to shred a guitar solo, but you need the taste to know when a guitar solo should happen. You become the director, not the actor.
Precisely. And that brings us back to your opening comparison.
Punk rock?
Yes. Punk was about saying, you don't need to be a virtuoso to start a band. You don't need to go to a conservatory. You don't need expensive gear.
You just need 3 chords and the truth.
And this new movement is taking that logic to its absolute conclusion. It is saying, you don't even need the 3 chords.
You just need the truth. You just need the idea.
It breaks the gatekeeper's hold on creation completely. It redefines who gets to call themselves an artist. If you have an idea, you can manifest it.
It does. And that is terrifying to the establishment. Just like the synthesizer was. Just like the drum machine was. Just like the sampler was.
But history tells us that the fake eventually becomes the foundation of the new real.
So we've unpacked the history, the philosophy, the panic, and the potential. We've seen that the fear of AI is the same fear that greeted the radio. We've seen that inauthenticity can be a tool for radical freedom, like a euro banknote that belongs to everyone.
And we've seen that while there are risks of de-skilling, risks of corporate control, there is also the potential for a massive explosion of creativity from people who have been silent until now.
I want to leave the listener with one final kind of provocative thought. We spend so much time worrying about the soul of the creator. Did the robot have a soul when it made the beat? No, obviously not. It's math.
But music doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in the ear of the beholder.
Exactly. If a machine generates a piece of music and you listen to it and it moves you to tears, if it gives you goosebumps, Does that say something about the machine?
Or does it say something about you?
Perhaps the soul of music was never in the creator at all.
Maybe the soul has always been in the listener.
Maybe we provide the soul. That's the reflection. That's the digital shine. We are the ghost in the machine.
That is the aura reborn.
So don't be afraid of the ghost. You are the ghost. Go out there, open up Suno or Udio, and collaborate with the inevitable. Create something that didn't exist 5 minutes ago. Thanks for diving deep with us.
See you next time.